teaching people to be responsible and thoughtful users of AI is really key, and keeping critical thinking at the center. Because again, one, people can succeed at a task probably a mediocre level if they're just relying on an LLM to do it for them, creating sort of this AI slop. But the people that are using it as a true partner and keeping the human at the center are the ones that are going to really augment their capability. A book that just came out from a contact of mine, Wendy Tan, and she just came out, just a couple days ago, with a book called Smarter. And that book is all about how to keep the human at the center of leveraging AI, augmenting what we do and not just replacing us. It's really powerful because the key thing is keeping critical thinking at every step, using it as a sparring partner. And again, unless you have an agent that's built for that, it's knowing how to prompt it so that it doesn't give you the answer too soon.
Eric, thanks so much for joining today. It's been really great getting to know you, and you have such wealth of sort of perspective and insight when it comes to learning that comes from different experiences. So I'm really excited to dive into the conversation today.
Thank you so much, Vince, for having me on. I'm really excited about the conversation. What a better way to spend a Friday night than talking about learning.
Two learning nerds sort of talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
I think we can dive right in. When we chatted, you mentioned this concept of AI as a super learning coach. And you mentioned you see its potential to help people become better, like more effective learners in different ways. And so I wanted to first dive into that. Help me understand what you mean by that and how you see them playing out.
First of all, I see technology as sort of an enabler, and it has been for years, of our dreams, desires, passions, and whether that be GPS, enabling us to find our way around, whether that be social media, initially, enabling us to connect with people. It's maybe gone a bit astray since then, but initially that was the idea. And AI is another tool that can help us enable our dreams, which often is learning is a part of those dreams, right? I just recently read a book called Super Agency by Reid Hoffman, and he talks about this notion of we're in the era of super agency, meaning with AI, it has the potential to unlock opportunities that weren't there before, and basically allow us to have this sort of super agency, to realize, to have agency over what we want to achieve. When it comes to learning, the potential for AI to augment and to help us become better learners, or either individually, collectively, or as organizations, is immense. Some examples, if we take individuals as they're learning, either in a formal learning environment or in a class, or wanting to learn a language, we know that, well, there's this concept. When I was studying second language acquisition and teaching English as a foreign language, my background is in that, and I did a master's in that. And I started my career in education, language education. There was a concept by an author named Rod Ellis, something called a good language learner. Okay. His research showed that successful language learners were ones that employed a breadth and a diversity of learning strategies. And basically the best language learners, if you ask somebody, oh, hey, I'm learning Japanese, and you say, oh, hey, how are you learning Japanese? Mediocre or a maybe less successful learner would say something like, oh, I'm doing Duolingo. And what else? Well, oh, no, I'm just doing Duolingo every day, but I've been really sticking to it. Well, we all know that spending hours on Duolingo every day doesn't necessarily get you to proficiency, right? You can get very good at Duolingo, but not necessarily proficient. Yeah, exactly. It's like going to the gym and only doing bicep curls.
Right. Like every day you do the same
Exactly. Yeah. And thinking that that's going to make you fit overall, right? So the best learners are the ones that, first of all, are typically aware of and that deploy regularly a breadth of learning strategies. AI has the power to become sort of super learning coach. Like if you are in the gym, you get a personal trainer. Well, that personal trainer is going to say, hey, you know what? Maybe lay off the bicep curls that you've been doing again and again and again every time you've come to the gym. Do a bit of cross training, Now, of course, LLMs today, well, the basic ones or the general ones are not built for that. So already, unless you're prompting it with knowledge of what it takes to be a good learner, you basically, there's the opportunity to build learning agents that could help you build a learning plan. I've tried this myself, learning Japanese, and it has helped me if I ask it, look, I want to put together, I'm leaving for Japan in 2 months. This is my goal. Put together a learning plan for me, make it a diverse plan. And it does give you already some tips. So the corpus of knowledge on learning strategies is in there. But if you really want it to be dialed in, you probably need pedagogues or professionals, instructional designers, et cetera, to build it. And one of the things that we can build these agents to do is to really focus on the full breadth of learning strategies. In sort of the learning strategy literature, and especially in language learning, there's two types of learning strategies. There's what we call direct strategies. So you're working really on language learning, memorizing, analyzing, doing grammar exercises, etc. And within there, there's a whole breadth of types of direct strategies. So already you can say, look, within the direct strategies, I want a breadth and a diversity of direct strategies for learning the language. And then there's indirect strategies. These are strategies to help you manage the learning process itself. And that can also be something that we'd be able to, ideally, we should be able to make that part of sort of this super learning coach ability that AI has the potential to be. Indirect strategies are things like planning the learning process, emotional regulation, helping you stay motivated. It can also help nudge you, things like that. The potential is immense to help people become better learners.
I think what's really interesting is that your spin on the super learning coach is different and a little bit additional or complementary to what people usually talk about. I think a lot of people, when talk about like AI as a learning coach, literally talks about AI being the delivery engine of the experience.
Okay.
But I think what you're actually saying is like one more meta, which is like AI can help you strategize. It's like a learning strategist for you.
Yes.
Okay, if your goal is here, actually the best way to get to that goal and learn is, in fact, these different kinds of things, rather than the one that's literally like do ABC like in the actual content itself. Is that fair to say?
A lot of people think of AI as a sparring partner for practice, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Is that good way to say it? Yeah. Whereas you're saying like it doesn't have to be only sparring. It could be like all these other things to do. And yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be only sparring. And the sparring element of it, and this is another piece that where the potential, and like you said, people have recognized this now for some time, that AI has that potential to be that super sparring partner, right? One of the things that lacks most often when people are designing learning journeys is quality practice. I know from my years in learning, there's always this trade-off of, hey, how much time can people spend in the classroom? How long can this learning journey be? And so what happens is you mostly prioritize putting in the content, maybe some knowledge tests, things like that. And you can only bake in so much practice in the journey. And then you just sort of have to hope people use it on the job and things like that. Now we don't have to, because you can build in practice through an AI coach, right? A study just came out. Somebody sent it to me just a couple of days ago, actually. It's the OECD came out with their digital education outlook for 2026. And the theme of it is exploring effective uses of Gen AI in education. And it's a study that shows that students that use AI tutoring can increase the effectiveness of their learning by 2 versus people that don't have it. What also came out of the study is that it needs to be really built for that.
Right. It can't just tell you the answer.
Exactly. And that's key. And that's where the danger can lie, or the pitfall can be, is that if you take away the process from the learning experience, you can have somebody succeed at the task, but fail at learning. That's the second way, indeed, that AI can be a super learning coach is, planning the learning, helping you strategize your learning plan, building it, keeping you honest, doing it, nudging, things like that. And the second one, of course, is being a sparring partner. Quality feedback is something that people lack. I mean, we know no matter how much you tell people that it's important to give people feedback as their manager, as their peer, as their colleague, it doesn't happen enough. Again and again, we see in learning programs on leadership skills, on how to give feedback, when to give feedback, please give more feedback. And it still isn't happening, well, maybe to the scale that it could happen. And why? I mean, because of course emotions are involved. You don't want to hurt people's feelings. Depending on the organization's culture, people might pay lip service to it, but it's actually kind of frowned upon. Whereas AI doesn't care. I mean, it'll give you quality feedback if it's programmed to. So that's another area where it's immensely important, and the opportunity is really big. On individual learning, I had a couple other examples. When I was thinking about this, It reminded me of a couple concepts from a book called How We Learn. It's a book by Benedict Carey. In that book, he talks about first, so different types of learning and what makes for good learning and effective learning in those different types of learning. So it talks about just pure memorization, for example. And we know that AI can very much help with that. Repetition, reminders, nudges, all of those things. We also know that, like we just talked about, in terms of behavior change, AI for an individual has the potential to really make feedback practice, right? After every meeting, if you've got transcription on, you can ask it for feedback. You can also do it, while you're preparing, of course, your one-to-ones, all of these things, but also for things like innovation or problem solving. One of the things that Benedict Carey talks about in the book is this concept of incubation. Okay. And he actually talks about how he calls it incubation, but it's like distraction. He talks about when you're working on a sticky problem, and we all know this to be true, just sort of anecdotally, it's often when you walk away from the problem that you're like, oh, aha, I've got it.
Yeah.
You could be in the shower, you could be running, you could be in the metro. If you think about it, like when in cars now, when you've been driving for too long or you start showing signs of fatigue, it tells you, hey, time to take a break. Same thing for learning. I mean, if you have AI helping you and sort of accompanying a problem solving topic with you or a problem solving activity with you, it can also say, you know what, time to walk away. Or like a Fitbit tells you it's time to get up and do some steps after an hour. Same concept can be helpful for learning. So I think that, again, the potential for AI to be in, again, different forms, Gen AI, agentic AI, all these, to be a super learning coach for individuals is really, really high. It's unlimited. That's some of my thoughts on that.
A lot of the things that you shared resonates. I will ask a sort of a follow-up question that I think
Yeah.
is really a challenge, I think, in organizations. I think all of the examples that you share presuppose that the person wants to learn the thing.
Yeah. Right.
Like they generally need to oh, I want to learn how to speak another language. I want to learn X, or I'm very curious about philosophy or whatever it might be. I think the truth of the matter is when you're an adult, most of the things you have to learn are not things you actually are deeply intrinsically motivated to learn. It's because your organization needs you to learn them or someone else just needs you to learn them.
Yeah.
And I think you run into this perennial problem of people doing the minimum possible thing to just get through it. This is the classic problem of you keep on producing videos and nobody's watching those training videos. Really.
Yeah.
I think at least anecdotally, I've heard that AI coaches at the very beginning, there might've been some novelty factor, but it's actually not seeing that much usage inside companies. So they're sort of dying. So I think there's a real challenge of getting people to care. How do you think you solve that? Or is an AI as a super learning coach is not actually supposed to solve that problem? It's more of a support mechanism for those who want.
Yeah, that problem I think will always exist, like it exists for fitness. The opportunities that technology has unlocked in terms of fitness, massive, yet there's still people that just aren't interested in getting fit. And no matter how much technology can help you do that, some people just aren't going to be interested. Where I do see space for this, and this is something that we're looking into in my organization actually, is how can we get people when they are in need of an answer or they're preparing something, a big deadline, or just simply, they have that spark of motivation and they start looking for answers, whether that be in our learning platform or on our internal LLM that we use. We work with Copilot. How can we get that moment to be the moment that helps them create good habits?
Make it count, basically.
Kind of, yeah. So in the time of need, of course, they're going to need, it's about helping them find the answer. And at the same time, it's also an opportunity to say, hey, I see that you're interested in doing better at XYZ. These are the resources that can help you do that. And by the way, if you want to get good at it, here is a learning plan that can help you. And it's okay. Start with doing these e-learnings or watching these videos, doing this LinkedIn learning course, etc. Then talk about it with a peer, get a buddy to do it with you. And then after that, try it a couple times. And if you want, you can share back with me some of your success stories or things that you struggled with. So I think that that's an opportunity to get past that, or at least maybe diminish it, where there's an opportunity to get people motivated. I deeply believe that, everybody likes to be part of sort of a winning team. If you're getting learning wins, you're much more likely to continue if you're seeing progress. And if you know what to do more than, well, I did this e-learning and, now I don't really know what to do next.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I agree with the idea of when people understand the need, I think organizations have not made it easy or efficient for people to learn or effective. So they
Yeah.
just thought of like materials that are like, wait, like I don't need all of this. So I think AI definitely has the power to make that moment really efficient and effective so that it feels like the ROI of time spent is high. I'm very interested to see how organizations solve the motivation issue that is separate from like that, right? Like how do you get people to want to do something that they might normally care about?
Part of that goes much wider than it does. It goes much wider than learning.
Yeah, it's just like a
So
work. It's like
yeah,
honestly like a
exactly.
work.
Motivation in,
Yeah.
in organizations. So I'd say to that, the most important thing, and this is something that we focus on and other good companies to work for focus on, just helping people understand where their talents are, what they want to do, and helping them form a career plan that makes sense for them and that is motivating for them. And that is the key for me. Because if people see and are supported in self-reflection, self-awareness enough to understand what gets them motivated, where they want to go, then they will thrive and they will look for the ways to learn. The person that hired me at Danone, his name is Thierry Bonetto. He was our former CLO. And so I credit him with this expression or this motto. And it's really stuck with me over the years. It's intention times skills, or intention multiplied by skills equals performance. And it starts with intention, not with skills. Because basically, if people know why they're doing something and they want to do something, they'll find the skills to do it. Yet, if people have the skills and they have no intention to do it, even if they have the skills and they're
Right.
great
It
at
doesn't,
it,
yeah.
it
There's no
doesn't work.
behavior change there. If you
Exactly.
but you won't do it, then
Exactly. So your point is spot on, and that was 10 years ago, and it's still very powerful. So thank you, Thierry, if you're watching for that. It's really shaped my approach. Anyway, so yeah, I think it's wider than that. Motivation is an organizational, a personal, a managerial, a leadership topic that you can crush motivation much more easily than it is to build it up in an organization. And good organizations are the ones that help people find the things that make them tick and provide career paths that allow them to express those talents and those desires.
yeah, I love that. You also had shared with me the risk of over personalization with AI and the need to think about collective learning. What did you mean by that? And can you tell me a little bit more about that side of your perspective?
Sure. So this is something that's been percolating in my mind for some time, and it started with micro learning when people were talking very much about micro learning. And yeah, micro learning is a thing, and it's helpful for some things. And long form learning is also important. There was a time in the learning industry when everything was about micro learning. If you're not doing micro learning, and if everything is not micro learning, your program is terrible. Okay? No, I'm sorry, that's just not true. Okay. And there are times when people need to sit and think for long periods of time and have long programs to get things done. And that same approach for me is for personalization. Okay. Yes, personalization is a massive opportunity. The opportunity of students that today don't have tutors. I mean, around the world, there's millions, if not billions, of students that don't have the opportunity to have personalized tutoring. That's most students, they don't have it. And if AI at scale enables that, wow, that's amazing. If AI at scale allows learning to be tailored to each individual's learning style, the way they love to learn, that's amazing. And that can go way too far. I met one provider in Learning Tech France, Learning Technologies France. It's an event that showed me something that it's amazing. It's a tool that allows you to take any content, and the learner, not the instructional designer, the learner can say, cool, give me that same e-learning, but I want it in podcast form. Now, podcast. I want it in a video. Bang, video. I want it in book form or text. Cool, whatever. So what happens is, what we talked about before, diversity in learning strategies, it just creates an echo chamber of your favorite learning strategy again and again and again, and you've got the over bicep curl effect at scale. You're not pushing people out of their comfort zone. So that's one aspect of it. It can be bad for learning if you're just doing the thing that you love all the time and that's easy for you. And individualization and personalization can only go so far, in the sense that yes, it's part of human nature, but it's also collective experiences are also part of human nature, and probably much more.
Especially
Throughout history,
right.
Yeah, we're social animals, right? So the proof for me of this is in Netflix, you have, okay, yes, you have your personalized recommendations, and there's still recommendations of what everybody else is watching. Even if it doesn't fit what you're interested in, they don't care because they know that people want to talk about certain shows that other people are watching. There's also the opportunity to do watch parties, to sync watching, because, yeah, people want to watch something together, even if they're not in the same room. Cinemas. People still go to the cinema to watch things at the same time as everybody else. What I've seen in learning is that, and especially after COVID, that sort of boosted this in our organization was people wanted to do the programs that everybody else was doing. So yeah, they want personalization, but when I do sort of learning coaching conversations with people that just come to me and say, oh, hey, I want to learn this, I want to learn that, what can I do? I might be able to find the program that's really most fit for them in terms of where they are. But often they're like, yeah, but I've heard about this other program that, everybody on my team is doing. I want to do that one. And you're like, well, that's, it's close, but it's not really. They're like, yeah, but that's the one I want to do. And why? Because they want to be part of a group and they want to be able to talk about it and they want to be able to have that experience. So personalized learning, I don't want to say it can't create, team glue, organizational glue, but collective learning experiences definitely do. And that is a need. And that is something that people want. And as an organization, some of the most powerful transformations that we've been on have been one size fits all programs because everybody's on the same page. And yes, some people need it more than others, but it creates a collective movement around one thing. And that's still really powerful for people. For me, it's about doing both and not replacing one with the other.
I think that resonates a lot in like a couple of ways. You're a team when you work together, and people make this analogy all the time. The best teams aren't like ones with like a bunch of superstars or like you have to operate as a collective. Work gets done in a collective, and the idea that you have a shared language, like the trust that you build, like people are motivated to just work with each other. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we're also evolved as humans to learn really effectively when somebody else says something. Like if you just read a text and someone you trust tells you something, the impact that someone that you trust tells you something is a lot higher because then you make better connections. I think we're just wired differently. Yeah, and like I personally there's a version of personalized learning that I really dislike. And then there's a version of personalized learning that I think is like interesting and actually relevant. But I generally agree with the idea of,
Well, tell me more. What's the kind you like and what's the kind you don't like?
Without diverging too much into like my own preferences, I would say like personalized learning that is actually adaptive learning, I think I can see why it's useful. Meaning like it understands where you are and it actually puts you in the right zone of proximal development, and so like it's pushing you. That I think makes total sense. I think a lot of
like that tutor idea.
Right. And like it's sort of there to like push you and like ask you the hard question that you're barely going to be able to answer and not waste your time on things you already know. Right. Yeah. But I think the idea of personalized learning that a lot of learning technology vendors have sort of pushed, which is like playlist of content that's just like sort of recommended at you, I think is really overblown in their promise and like not quite. I think content isn't learning is sort of my view.
Oh, I agree. And that's really what, again, this study from the OECD, that's what came out of it, is that basically the most effective learning is when AI and a learner are working in tandem to iterate towards an outcome, right? So it's really like you mentioned this notion of scaffolding the learning process, providing support just when you need it, just enough to stay upright and to keep moving forward. Made me think one of the things I wanted to mention earlier about this notion of a super coach was in collective environments. And we mentioned earlier about the possibility of it giving feedback to people on the job. So after a meeting, how did that go? What was my presentation like? Where were the areas where I could have been clearer, et cetera? But also for collective environments. I think the opportunity of having AI help us become more effective as groups is also immense. One of the things, when you look at healthy learning environments, of course, there's the individual level, people that are curious, people that want to learn, people that are motivated, again, because they see that their passions can be realized in this environment. That's one part of a healthy learning environment. Another part of a healthy learning environment is the ability for teams to learn together and to learn from experience collectively. The opportunity that we have of having AI be able to give us feedback on a process so that the next time we're more effective, whether that be in a meeting, whether that be in a brainstorming session, whether that be in a design session, is immense, or even in real time holding the space. Now, one of the things, that Sparkwise does that I think is amazing is it holds that learning space for people that are in an intentional learning environment. You can extrapolate that into in the flow of work environments.
Just actual work. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Holding a space so that people are going through a design process, keeping time, pushing people to make decisions. And the other thing that I think is amazing is the opportunity for it to help us become more inclusive. We know people get shut out of conversations. Some people's voices aren't heard as much for whatever reason, and in different contexts, those people that often get shut out of conversations are different from place to place and from company to company for whatever reason. But the ability for people to say, hey, we haven't heard from this person, for AI to be like, hey, we haven't heard from this person, you're unlocking. We teach people, hey, the more voices that are heard, the more likelihood you are to be able to come to a good resolution to your problem or your idea or whatever. And AI can help us become more conscious of that and give us feedback and make sure that the process is fruitful and that we're hearing all voices. So, and of course, because it's LLMs and it's trained on data, and if the data is biased, we also have tons of cases of where AI can also shut people out and come up with biases of its own. But it can also, if it's done properly, it can help us maybe recognize, I don't know, if our own unconscious biases or when we're shutting people out. So I think that's important. And the other one is organizational learning in terms of like postmortems on projects. One of the things that really healthy learning organizations do is they really ritualize the debrief, right? What happened? We just finished this project. What happened? What do we do differently next time? And again, if we leverage AI at scale, it's present in our meeting, and we have it accompany us through a project, it can really help, again, say, yeah, let's run a postmortem meeting. And, this is also the data that we have on the project, on the conversations. And this is what the LLM is seeing. That's also an opportunity.
I love that. Yeah. I love the idea of like getting it to help people interact and work better with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
The sort of the last area that I wanted to touch upon is zooming out a bit. I think one of the things you also mentioned to me when we chatted last time was around this concept of healthy learning ecosystems and how you see L&D's role evolving, with these new technologies. Can you help me understand what you meant by that and what L&D's role entails in that?
Yeah, it draws on a lot of the research around learning organizations. What does it mean to be a learning organization? And for me, a good L&D team, an effective learning organization, does a number of things. One, of course, it provides people with content, right? With opportunities to learn, learning assets. It enables people to find information when they need it. And that's sort of like, giving people the fish, right? If they're hungry, you give them a fish, right? And then there's also an element of course, teaching people to fish. So getting people to upskill, that's also part of our job, right? It's really teaching them to do the task for themselves. Our learning assets are typically sort of in between those two things, right? If you take sort of giving people to fish, you might think about things like job aids or instruction manuals, and also sometimes learning content, e-learning, things like this. And sort of the teaching people to fish, our content is also part of that. We teach people to do things, and the upskilling actually happens in the courses. Yet again, when we don't use AI at scale for practice is always limited. There's really an opportunity to improve that teaching people to fish part, really teaching people the skill with AI. For the giving people to fish, AI, of course, also has an immense potential. I mean, it needs to be in an organization that has sort of mastery of their data, but bringing together a company-wide corpus of knowledge is sort of the corporate dream. We have in big, diverse, decentralized organizations, we have so much information everywhere, and getting a handle on that and having AI help us make sense of that and find things and, make it available to the right people at the right time is immense. So again, giving people to fish, teaching people to fish. The other thing is a good learning organization gives people the opportunity to fish, right? I mean, if you teach people to fish, but you never give people
if there's no fish, then it's like,
no, but that's the other thing. That's the ecosystem. But even just giving people the time to fish.
Wow.
So if somebody's novice at something and they're upskilling on it, if you never let them try it and fail and do it on their own, then first, in terms of motivation, it's a killer. I mean, they're not going to want to learn anything new again. They're going to stick to what they know. And two, they're never going to get good at it. So giving people the opportunity to try new things is also part of a good learning organization. That can be, gigs, internal missions, internal mobility, putting, people on sort of a learning project that's part of their development plan can be immensely helpful. And then you mentioned it, the ecosystem. So how do you create and how do learning organizations ensure that the ecosystem is healthy? How do you ensure that there are fish to catch? And that really comes from having an overall healthy learning environment, nurturing the soil, right? Nurturing the water for this particular analogy. That comes from things that are much deeper, like psychological safety, the right, again, to test and learn, the right to fail, just listening, empathy, trust, all those things. I believe that you can't just work on any one of those things. You can't just work on the course catalog and just hope, if all those other things aren't in place, you're still failing as a learning organization overall. For that environment, the ecosystem part, AI can help again with, things like what we mentioned before about pointing out biases or helping us be more inclusive or more effective meetings but that's really a human thing at the heart of it. That's really something that people need to lead. The other thing that I'll say is, of course, for that environment in an AI world to thrive, responsible AI usage needs to be the key. Ethics, intellectual property, privacy, all those things, that can really poison the lake. If people feel that the technology is degrading trust rather than growing it, then AI is a problem in an organization.
Yeah, these all really resonate. And you called it like the learning ecosystems. This generally links to like an overarching operating model that companies need because every company has access to AI. Like AI is not going to be the source of competitive advantage on your own because everyone else has the same thing. The source of competitive advantage is data you have in the organization.
Yep, data for sure.
People operating on top of the AI, on top of your data, doing like distinctive things, right?
Yes.
Both of which are sort of like encompassing your learning ecosystem. So I think, right now, a lot of the organizations feel like they're just trying to automate a bunch of stuff with AI. Okay, fine. You are going to get some short-term ROI there. There's just no way you're going to be competitive like that if that's all you're doing in the next like couple of years. And you have to figure out how to take advantage of your competitive edge that nobody else has. And this thing you mentioned, like, has to be there because otherwise, what do you have that's distinctive compared to anybody else? And so,
absolutely,
I think it's like a company strategy thing, to be honest.
Absolutely, and that's what we're thinking about more and more. And I think as a culture, as a learning community, we're thinking about it more and more. It's teaching people to be responsible and thoughtful users of AI is really key, and keeping critical thinking at the center. Because again, people can succeed at a task probably kind of a mediocre level if they're just relying on an LLM to do it for them, creating sort of this AI slop, right? But the people that are using it as a true partner and keeping the human at the center are the ones that are going to really augment their capability. There's a book that just came out from a contact of mine. Her name is Wendy Tan. She wrote a book a while ago called Learning Agility, and it's a really cool book. And she just came out, just recently, I think a couple of days ago, with a book called Smarter. And that book is all about that, how to keep the human at the center of leveraging AI, how to make sure that it's augmenting what we do and not just replacing us. And it's really powerful because the key thing is keeping critical thinking at every step, using it as a sparring partner, and ensuring, and actually, again, unless you have an agent that's built for that, it's knowing how to prompt it so that it doesn't give you the answer too soon.
Right.
And really just saying, look, I don't want you to respond. I want to get my thoughts out. Then I want you to dig. I want you to ask me more questions. I want, little by little, you're refining the output. This is something that some learning scientists have talked about as percolation. So in the creative process, you need to iterate your idea. Ernest Hemingway said, good writing is rewriting. That is the key for the creative process to be augmented with AI. You need to keep it as an iterative process, or else the magic just won't happen. It's just going to be mediocre.
Well, thank you, Eric, for joining and sharing so much insight into how you see AI really being an augmenting force for people who want to learn. and hopefully start of many conversations like this. So appreciate you spending this time on a Friday evening.
Yeah, no, it was a real pleasure. Thank you, Vince, for inviting me. And I really have enjoyed the conversation. So thanks for all the great questions. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.